Today we're going to talk about Japan's electronic industry. I'm going to start off by first saying that Japan has the largest customer electronic industry in the world. This includes radios, laptops, LCD screens for TVs, and cell phones. This all started from a man named Masaru, who founded Sony in 1946, which was the first electronic company in Japan. Even though Japan is a leader in electronic industry, the United States has been pushing for that #1 spot. Foreign rivals have been delivering faster improvements for products, which has made Japan's market go down. Over the course of our presentation, we will be looking in depth over Japan's culture, political structure, economic system, and their strategic alliance. This helps us look at how Japan can be more successful in international business.
Japan has a fascinating and multifaceted culture. On one hand, they have traditions dating back thousands of years. On the other hand, it's a society in a state of rapid flux with continually changing fads, fashion, and technological developments. When considering doing business in Japan, there are a number of things to look into. For the purpose of this presentation, we will explore the cultural dimensions of Japan. Cultural dimensions of a certain country are very important to look into when considering doing business in that country. We will use Hofstede's dimensions. Power distance is the first dimension. This is the extent to which the less powerful members of institutions and organizations within a country expect and accept that power is distributed unequally. Japan scores a 54. They are a borderline hierarchical society. Doing business can be slow because all decisions need to be confirmed by top management. The next dimension is individualism. This is the degree of interdependence a society maintains amongst its members. Japan scores a 46. They show a lot of characteristics of a collective society, such as putting harmony of a group above individual opinions. They are famous for their loyalty to their companies. They have chosen this loyalty for themselves, which is an individualistic characteristic. The third dimension is masculinity. A high score means that the society is more masculine and will be driven by competition, achievement, and success. Japan rates at a 95. They are one of the most masculine societies in the world. There is severe competition between groups. Japanese people are notorious workaholics, which is an expression of their masculinity. It is still very hard for women to succeed in corporate Japan because of their masculine traditions of hard, long working hours. The next dimension is uncertainty avoidance. This has to do with how well the society deals with the fact that the future is unknown. Japan has a score of 92. They are one of the most uncertainty-avoiding countries on earth. In corporate Japan, a lot of time and effort is put into feasibility studies, and all the risk factors must be worked out before any project can go forward. Managers need to know all the facts before making a decision. The fifth dimension is long-term orientation. This describes how every society has to maintain some links with its own past while dealing with the challenges of the present and the future. Japan has a score of 88. They see their lives as a short moment in a long history of moments. In corporate Japan, there is a high rate of research and development, even in difficult economic times. They believe that the companies are not here to make money every quarter for the shareholders, but to serve the stakeholders and society for many generations to come. The last dimension is indulgence. This is the extent to which people control their desires and impulses, based on the way they were raised. Japan scores at a 42 and would be considered restrained. Restrained societies do not put much emphasis on leisure time and control the gratification of their desires. Their actions are restrained by social norms, and that they believe that indulging themselves is somewhat wrong. So those are the cultural dimensions of Japan.
Now I'll discuss Japan's government and political system. Following World War II in 1947, Japan's government and political system changed forever as its newly drafted constitution came into effect. The constitution is also known as the post-war constitution or the peace constitution, as its intent was to abolish militarism and create a foundation for a more peaceful and democratic Japan. This constitution is based on 3 principles: sovereignty of the people, respect for fundamental human rights, and renunciation of war. Under the post-war constitution, Japan is considered a parliamentary democratic monarchy. and it consists of 3 branches of power, including the legislative, executive, and judicial. The legislative branch is also known as the Diet and consists of the House of Representatives, in which members are elected every 4 years, and the House of Councilors, in which 1/2 of members are elected every 3 years. This branch is the sole lawmaking body of Japan. The next branch is the executive, also known as the cabinet, and is headed by the prime minister, who is elected by the Diet every 4 years. However, due to much political unrest throughout Japan, most have not served a full term. Lastly, the judicial branch includes the Supreme Court, the highest court in which all judicial power is granted. This also includes the district court, high court, family court, and summary courts. And the judicial system is based on European civil law. There are many political parties throughout Japan, including the Liberal Democratic, the Komeito, and the Communist Party. The Liberal Democratic Party is the largest party in Japan and is made up of conservative, nationalist, and centrist groups, and has dominated Japan since 1955. It was formed when the Liberal Party of Japan and Japan's Democratic Party merged after World War II. The Democratic Party is the second largest party in Japan and was formed in the 1990s as a result of several anti-liberal Democratic parties merging. The Komeito Party is relatively centrist and independent and receives support from a religious organization affiliated with a sect of Buddhism. And lastly, the Japanese Communist Party is the oldest party in Japan, dating back to 1922, when it was formed as an underground organization during Japan's empire. It became legal after World War II and has recently shifted to a more socialist party. Just as political parties have changed over the years, so has the emperor's position within Japan. The emperor's position today differs dramatically from that of pre-World War II. After the new constitution took effect, the emperor lost all of his effective power within Japan. Today he is considered a symbol of the state and of the unity of the people. He attends events, receives foreign guests at his home, and makes visits overseas, all with the goal of promoting peace and prosperity for the Japanese people.
So now I'm going to take a look at Japan's economic history. After World War II, Japan went under some pretty big changes. They were left pretty much completely destroyed, and due to an agreement with America, they weren't allowed to use any of their money to rebuild their army, and they don't have very much for natural resources, so Japan invested almost all of their money into manufacturing. About 10 years ago, Japan had a pretty bad economic crisis, mainly due to the asset price bubble. The government's response to that was, well, let's go raise taxes. But unfortunately, that didn't work. The Japanese people just quit spending. And since, as a whole, the Japanese are very risk averse, they didn't really know what else to do, so they just kind of stuck with keeping high taxes. In 2012, a man named Shinzo Abe was elected as their prime minister, and he implemented something called Abenomics, which is based on 3 arrows. The first is government spending, the second is quantitative easing, and the third is structural reform. So currently, Japan is dealing with these 3 new ideas, and quantitative easing has made a pretty big impact on their economy. Essentially, quantitative easing makes the yen less valuable, so this means that imported products into Japan are more expensive for the Japanese consumers to purchase, so as a result, they're not purchasing quite as much. Another downside to the yen being less valuable is American firms that are located in Japan, their profits when they take them over to the US, because the dollar is stronger, are less valuable. However, there is one upside to the yen being less valuable, which is this is a great time for firms to actually start up business in Japan, because since the yen is cheaper, it's cheaper for them to build everything. So for our firm, for example, it would be a lot cheaper for us to get all the buildings, etc. that we need. Another issue that Japan is dealing with is their government debt to GDP ratio. Currently, their government debt is 2 times what their GDP is, which is one of the highest in the world. This, unfortunately, is something that's unsustainable. Eventually, the Japanese economy is going to have to deal with this, and that's something that incoming firms need to be aware of, that at some point the economy is going to take a pretty big hit. Another issue for the Japanese economy is low female workplace participation. Childcare is not only really hard to find, but it's also really expensive. So one thing that our firm could do is, all we would really have to offer for a benefit is just childcare, and that means that we would get some of the top female employees in all of Japan, because they would hopefully all want to work for us, because we're one of the only ones offering that.
Now I'll talk to you about Japan's infrastructure. Japan is known for their efficient railway systems. JR Company is able to transport over 1 million people per day with little to no delay. Separate lines are even set up for passenger and freight, which accommodates population and businesses within Japan. Railways have been privatized since the 70s, so JR Company is innovative with their train technology to keep up with the competition. Their roadway network is not as popular for use as the railway system. It costs both time from heavy traffic and money to travel by car. Along with this, Japan levies high taxes on ownership, along with high fees for parking spaces and fuels. Japan's manufacturing capabilities are another part of their infrastructure. Japan has always had a lack of natural resources, so instead they opt to import raw materials such as timber and metals, and companies later export their finished products and goods. Japanese companies are known for their automobiles and coffee machines. Japanese foreign investment has become popular in recent years. Because shipping finished goods is so expensive, Japanese investors decided to go where raw materials were readily available and where most of the business already was. This saves the companies money on shipping from Japan's seaports and airports. So without Japan's infrastructure, they wouldn't be as successful globally, and without their efficiency, they couldn't meet the demand for foreign investment.
All right, so lastly, I'm going to talk about strategic alliance. So the definition is that it's an agreement between two or more parties or countries to pursue objectives in an organization. So an example would be Japan and the United States. They have mutual benefits for electronics. So like cell phones, they might patent them in the US, but they make them in Japan. So there's that mutual agreement. So some advantages are going to be shared knowledge. So, having two countries, there's going to be more of a higher growth rate because there's so many people there with more knowledge. Their company will grow faster around the world as well. Some disadvantages, sharing can be kind of tough. I know that Japan might want to keep some more things underneath the table, but since they are in a strategic alliance, they do have to have everything out on the table for everyone to know. Resources and profits can be kind of iffy as well because some people might think that since Japan made it, that Japan should get more money out of it. So that can be one of the disadvantages. Uneven alliances, this means more of a, so the United States, since they have like Apple, they are becoming more first place in the electronic industry. So Japan might feel like they're lower than them. So having that unevenness can create an unbalance in a strategic alliance. So talking about Apple again, when Japan and Apple decided to come together for the first time, it was about a 1% or less than 1% that they had a market share, and today they have about 51%. So with that going up, it's becoming more even. The U.S. did have more of a hand on that one. So after we looked at Japan's culture, the political structure, economic system, strategic alliance, we see that moving into Japan's market is probably a great idea. This is because they have such a great hold on the electronic industry, and any country would benefit from Japan and should do international business with them to embrace new changes that are coming in the future for electronics. Thank you for listening to our presentation.